You guys good?
Absolutely.
All right, we're gonna call our meeting to order for Wednesday, May the 10th, 2023 at 6:47. Number two, declaration of pecuniary interest. Any members have a declaration of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, we'll move on to number three is our approval of the agenda. We have a motion of the agenda of the special council meeting on May 10th, 2023 be approved as presented. Mover, Deputy Mayor LaRose, Seconder, Councilor Marshall. Call the vote, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Number four is a motion that we move into closed session that in accordance with the Town of Pantangishene Procedure Bylaw 2019-25. The council of the Town of Pantangishene move into an in-camera session to discuss personal matters of an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees. All for mover. Councilor Durush and Councilor Waters. Further discussion? And then we'll talk about it. All in favor? Opposed? And that is carried. We'll move down the hall to the genealogy room and convene there for our closed session.
Can I get Sarah to just take one quick?
For sure.
Because we have like nice.
For sure.
Lights right now.
Yeah.
Where we-
Special light.
While we, yeah, while we go in.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for your attendance tonight. We're just gonna wrap up. We had a 6:45 PM meeting, so we're gonna wrap it up and we'll move into our formal next meeting. So item 4.3 is a rise from closed session. I have a motion that the council of the Town of Pantangishene rise from an in-camera session with a report. I'm looking for movers. Councilor, second by Councilor Marshall. Further comments? Call for the vote. All in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. Our report from the in-camera session is appointments to the following committees. So that the following committee appointments are recommended by the mayor to be approved by council for the remainder of this council term. Museum and Heritage Advisory Committee, Janice Gadsden and Michael Maloney. The Property Standards and Line Fence Viewers Committee, Lois Lipton, Larry Cascanet, and Bob Cummings. And the Town Dock Technical Advisory Committee, Ron Dalton, Chris Foley, Rick Lazell, Dennis Curry, Greg Garrett, and Stephen Morley Graham. We'll look for removal for this motion. Councilor Marshall, second, Councilor Vladimir. Further comments? We'll call for the vote. All in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Number 6 is our question period from the media public. That our 6:45 PM meeting. Any questions from media public? Seeing none, we'll look for a motion to adjourn at 7:07 PM. Look for mover, Deputy Mayor LaRose, second, Councilor Waters. Call for the vote. All in favor? And opposed? That is carried. And we'll move into our council meeting. So welcome again, everyone, for joining us for our council meeting for Wednesday, May the 10th, 2023. I'm going to call our meeting to order at 7:08 PM. We're going to start off with our land acknowledgement. Pantangishene respectfully acknowledges that we are on the traditional and treaty territory of the Anishinaabe people and their ancestors, now known as the Williams Treaties First Nations territory. This includes Chippewa Tribe Council, comprised of Bosley First Nation, Rama First Nation, and the Georgina Island First Nation, Alderville, Curve Lake, Hiawatha, and the Mississaugas of Scugog Island First Nations. Also, once home of the Huron-Wendat, and more recently, the historic settlement of the Métis. Pantangishene is now home to many Indigenous peoples. Pantangishene is proud of its Indigenous name, and more importantly, that for thousands of years, it has been and will continue to be an important homeland and gathering place for Indigenous people. We recognize that we are the stewards and caretakers of these these lands and waters, and are responsible to ensure that our mother, the earth, is here for future generations. Again, thank you. We're here at the Pantangishene Museum, and thanks for everyone participating here with us tonight. We're going to start with a council commitment, and I'll ask council to rise. And if Councilor Waters would be willing to talk to me before, I appreciate that.
We are grateful for the many gifts which have been bestowed on Pantangishene and its citizens, including the gift of freedom, opportunity, and peace that we enjoy. May we be worthy custodians of all that we have been entrusted to, of all that has been entrusted to us, and we ask that all in attendance and those who could not be here assist us in promoting good government. May our decisions as members of council be enlightened, and may we all be strengthened in our awareness of our duties and responsibilities. May we be granted the wisdom, knowledge, will, and understanding to deserve good fortune of the town, for the benefit of all, and to make good laws and wise decisions. Thank you for attending.
Thank you, Councilor Wood. And Councilor Durocher, you can help us in the French version. Councilor Clinton.
Nous sommes reconnaissants des nombreuses grâces accordées à Penetanguishene et à ses citoyens dont la liberté, les possibilités et la paix dont nous jouissons. Que nous soyons des intendants dignes de tout ce que nous a été confié. Nous demandons que toutes les personnes présentes et celles qui n'ont pas pu se présenter nous aident à promouvoir une bonne gouvernance. Que nos décisions en titre de membres du Conseil soient éclairées et que nous soyons tous renforcés à prendre conscience de nos devoirs et responsabilités. Que l'on nous accorde la sagesse, les connaissances, la volonté et la compréhension qui nous permettront de préserver la bonne fortune de la ville au bénéfice de tous, ainsi que de faire de bonnes lois et prendre de sages décisions. Merci de votre présence.
Thank you. Number 4 is our approve the agenda. We have a motion that the agenda of the regular council meeting for May the 10th, 2023 be approved as presented. The mover, Councilor Marshall, second Councilor, further comments or questions? Seeing none, we'll call for the vote. All in favor? And opposed? That is carried. Number 5 is a declaration of pecuniary interest. Any members have a declaration of pecuniary interest? Seeing none. 6 is our statement from members. Opportunity for our council members to share with the community the great work that's going on in the community. I'll just start off by starting just after our last month's meeting. Myself and the deputy mayor and our CO Jeff Lees met with Minister Kersner, our Solicitor General, regarding our CNC leasing costs. It was a very positive meeting. We're looking forward to hosting the Solicitor General here in the community in June. So we'll update you more with that. I want to thank Sarah and Bill participating with some grand openings in local businesses in town. We're at the pizza and the bookkeeping store, so thank you for that. The deputy mayor and I were at a local waste management information session hosted by the county Simcoe, which a lot of great information was shared with everyone. As well as the deputy mayor and I participated in the log sign contest at the Elmville Maple Syrup Festival. We did not bring home the gold, but we practiced up for next Winterama, so hopefully we'll have a better turnout next Winterama. I want to thank Jeff and staff. I was able to participate in the all-staff meeting last week and pass greetings on behalf of council, so thank you for giving that opportunity to indulge in that. And I want to thank Councillor Van Bunker passing a smile cookies to staff last week. I want to thank you, Councillor LaRue, for going to the Georgian Village for the volunteer appreciation event a few weeks back. So thank you for that. And to Councillor Marchand for our thoughts at the Penzance Claims banquet. So thank you for that. And Councillor DeRush for participation at the culture and at the MCC. So that's mine. We'll start with you, Councillor Waters.
Well, I was going to mention about the ribbon cutting. It's already been done. We didn't have a ribbon cutting for the accountant and our new Pizza Hut. And I also heard today that you're having 2 more businesses coming into town. Can't tell you what they are right now. There will be another retail store in the next store.
Thank you. Councillor Rush.
Certainly. So as you mentioned, I had the pleasure of attending the Creative Communities Cultural Conference, which was held on April 21st at the Midland Cultural Center. It was fabulous. The theme this year was re-energizing our cultural communities. It started off with a speaker that spoke to branding, which is timely for the town of Penetanguishene. Then we talked about the panel discussed re-engaging audiences after post-pandemic. Then we went into a presentation from Volunteer Toronto on re-energizing volunteers, which was really a wonderful presentation, very inspiring. And finally, we heard from a panel on re-energizing our cultural communities. The whole day was really very well done. And it was well attended and it was well appreciated, certainly after a dry spell that we just felt for the past couple of years. So I'd like to officially thank the organizing committee for a job, really well done, and for serving and supporting the culture community. And a special thanks goes out to our own Nicole Jackson from the Penetanguishene Museum for her very active participation with the Alliance and especially with the conference on the day after. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, your worship. Just two quick ones. It was nice to see that we had our new gravel placed at the town dock launch ramp. It was nice to see it get in, get flattened, get rolled, ready before 24th May weekend, which is a big thing down there. And the other thing was that our construction project at the library is probably 3/4 or more of the way done. So it'll soon start to look like a library.
Excellent. Thank you. Councilor Butler.
Thank you, worship. I just want to acknowledge the work and volunteerism of the North Simcoe Rotaract Club, who took on Champlain Road last Saturday as a project to collect litter from both sides of the road from Robert Street up to the town boundary. And I have it on firsthand information that collected at least 7 bags of garbage, perhaps more. And there was all kinds of things that were finding in ditches along the side of the road. So that was the first thing. So that's the North Simcoe Rotaract Club. The second thing is I want to just commend staff for how beautiful the flower beds look along Main Street. The tulips are up and they look great. And there's other flowers in those flower beds. I just want to commend staff for doing that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Murphy.
Thank you. Just a couple of things with regards to the Severn Sound Environmental Association. I have the honor of sitting on that committee and that board to represent the town of Penetanguishene. So we had our first quarter meeting, which was great. We have been very busy distributing seedlings. So I was in Oro-Medonte. Not that it was a competition, but I think we gave out all of our seedlings before the Midland team did, just a little bit of bragging rights. Those are on the record, right? And then also myself and other members of the SSBA board and staff, we will be planting trees this coming Friday morning. So again, not a race, but you know, there certainly will be keeping track of who plants the most trees, and I'm looking to represent the town quite proudly. The other piece too is that we are looking for additional volunteers to help with seedling planting on Terrian Park next Tuesday, May 16th at 4 p.m. So I've encouraged my son, who needs some volunteer hours, and his buddies to put some hip waders on and get digging. So if you have any other individuals in the community would like to volunteer and help out, the SSCA is looking for more volunteers to help with that planting here in Penetanguishene. That's it for me.
Thank you. Councilor.
Thank you, your worship. First of all, yes, it was a pleasure to again the volunteer services at Georgian Village and recognizing all the volunteers there. And I keep saying over and over how blessed Penetanguishene is in the volunteers that we have. I understand that they have approximately 100 volunteers at Georgian Village, which is phenomenal. The other thing is that Councillor Whitmore touched on the flowers. Very happy to see that Kathy is back and we'll be looking after our flower beds throughout the town. She does an amazing job. And the other thing is, I guess I'm looking forward to attending the conference, the Simcoe County Conference tomorrow in Round.
Awesome. Thank you. CEO Jeff Lees, if you want to share some comments from staff.
Thanks, your worship. 3 quick updates. One, I think I talked about this before, so I probably will sound like a bit of a broken record. The onboarding season from a human resources perspective is in full swing. I would suggest we're kind of tailing towards the end of that, but every department and staff throughout the various departments have played an integral role. This is a busy time for a community like ours in terms of onboarding seasonal staff. In addition to, we've had some full-time vacancies that in some cases we've had challenges filling, which is not normal. It's a new thing, this war on talent, particularly in the public sector. So that's just a little information. The second piece, the all-staff meeting, it was touched on by your worship. We did have an all-staff meeting last week where we brought everyone together. We closed the office for 2.5 hours, as council is aware and as the community is aware. It was a real good opportunity, the first time since prior to COVID, that we've been able to bring everyone together in a succinct and collective fashion. So lots of knowledge transfer, some health and safety stuff, updates from every department. And a real good opportunity to do a number of staff shout outs throughout the organization. So that was, we appreciate the understanding from the community and from our residents in the opportunity to close the office for 2.5 hours. The third piece is the strategic plan. As council is aware, we are kind of midway through that project. We are anticipating towards the latter part of summer, hopefully having an endorsed document by council. We've done significant public consultation, and certainly council and staff have been engaged thoroughly as well. So as a team of staff and council, I know we're looking forward to having a document that can guide us over the next 20 years as a community, but certainly with some emphasis on the next 4 years with this term of council. So I appreciate the opportunity, Your Worship, and that's my opinion.
Thank you. So May is Museum Month, and we have a tremendous treasure here at our museum. Unfortunately, our museum curator couldn't be here this evening. I think it's important we share the story and the history and the culture here. So maybe we'll ask if our Director of Recreation, Sherry, if you could share a couple comments about the museum, kind of the history, and just the great work that's being done here.
Sure, thank you, Your Worship. Yes, it's my honor to welcome everyone on behalf of the Running Community Services team to the Penetanguishene Centennial Museum and Archive. It's called Centennial because it was opened in the centennial year. Museum Month is celebrated across the province every May to recognize the contributions that they make to the communities that they're in. This museum certainly helps connects us to our story and preserves our history through our conservation of artifacts. We have approximately 20,000 artifacts here at the museum and the museum's care, one being the original council table being used here this evening. The museum provides many education programs, special events. Our events are usually maxed out. We have to, limit capacity. We have the genealogy research room that people may have noticed on their way in. Lots of people utilize this space to research their Métis history and those good pieces. This building is a heritage designated building. And for those that may not know, it is the last remaining general store on its original location in the province of Ontario. So that is very exciting. But I think the best part about our museum is the staff, Nicole that you spoke of earlier, Amy who's new with us, and the amazing group of volunteers we have here. It amazes me what they accomplish in all of their contributions. So thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. Thank you, everyone. We'll move on to the next item on our agenda is our proclamation. 7A, we have a proclamation regarding Museum Month. And I have a motion that whereas the 700+ museums, art galleries, and heritage sites across Ontario are key assets to education, employment, economic development, tourism, culture, and equity. And whereas the museums support the ability of Ontario municipalities to attract skilled workers in all sectors, including a workforce of museum professionals and volunteers. And whereas this month provides an opportunity to recognize the vital role museums play in helping to achieve recovery and rebuilding across Ontario, museums are local tourism assets which welcome visitors in every community across the province. And whereas these museums are community hubs providing access to the benefits of culture, heritage, and local vitality, as trusted public institutions, museums are valuable resources for education and learning. And whereas May 18, 2023 is International Museum Day to highlight museums as key contributors to the well-being and to the sustainable development of our communities, making them vibrant and vital places to live, work, visit, and invest. Therefore, I, Mayor Doug Lawson, do hereby proclaim May 2023 as May is Museum Month in the town of Penetanguishene and encourage all residents and tourists to visit our local museums in May. We'll look for a mover for this. Councilor Durrett, second by Councilor Waters. Further comments, questions? Seeing none, we'll call for the vote. All in favor? And opposed? That is carried. B is another proclamation regarding Children's Mental Health Week. We have whereas raising awareness about the importance of child and youth mental health is crucial to helping reduce stigma associated with accessing vital support. Whereas ensuring that families know about the availability of free, accessible, and inclusive child and youth mental health services and how to access them to help create healthy, thriving, and connected communities that support personal growth and well-being. Whereas providing early intervention and treatment for child and youth mental health is essential. All children, youth, and their families in need of mental health supports must have access to services when and where they need them. Whereas the color green is used to celebrate green and youth mental health, as it represents hope, growth, and transformation. Therefore, I, Doug Ross, and Mayor of the Town of Panasantashene, do hereby proclaim May 1st to the 7th as Children's Mental Health Week. Looking for a mover? Deputy Mayor LaRose, seconder, Councilor Waters. Further discussion? Call for the vote. All in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And C is a proclamation regarding the Victorian Order of Nurses for Simcoe County Week. Whereas the Victorian Order of Nurses for Canada is a charitable community-based healthcare organization that has addressed community health and social needs for 125 years. Whereas VON Simcoe County nurses, home support workers, community service coordinators, and many other staff and volunteers have been caring for the lives and well-being of residents of Panasantashene since 1991. And VON's nursing, health promotion, and support services make a contribution to the healthcare system in Ontario. Therefore, be it resolved that I, Doug Ross, and Mayor of the Town of Panasantashene, hereby proclaim May 21 to 27, 2023 as a VON week here in Panasantashene. I will mover. Councilor Vadabunker, seconder, Councilor LaRue. Further discussion? And none will call for the vote. All in favor? And opposed? That is carried. And just an announcement for everyone, we are going to be raising the VON flag on May the 24th at 9 a.m. at Town Hall. So everyone's welcome to join us at that time for that flag rising. Number 8 is our public meeting. We don't have any this evening. Number 9 is deputations and presentations. And I will go over to our podium for that. For our first presentation, I was surprised when I saw it on our agenda. Our first presentation is for our fire chief and our director of emergency services. Richard. Richard, even though he's only been here a few months, Richard is getting a recognition award tonight for 25 years of service from the Office of Fire Marshal and Emergency Management. Richard served 21 years with Mississauga Fire and Emergency Services, 4 years with White Church Hill, Stouffville Fire Department, Burlington Fire Department, and the City of Sudbury Fire Service. So, Richard, on behalf of the Office of Fire Marshal and Emergency Services, we'd like to recognize you for your service to Ontario, and we're glad to have you part of Team Panasantashene. Thank you. Next, we have some chat presentations from our budget process. I'll ask our recreation chair and vice chair if they can join me, and Sherry, if you can help us as well. So our first one is a chat presentation to the Panasantashene Garden Society. It's a little awkward. Dorothy and Bonnie, you wanna come on up? Again, thank you for all you do. Everything you do. Well, that we can't catch, but you're in that.
You want to look up here for a moment? Thank you. It's gonna be. We're already dealing with such tight quarter.
Perfect, thank you.
Good.
Yeah, and on behalf of the Garden Club, we'd like to say thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You did. You guys go. That's it. Our next check presentation this evening, is through the Georgia McDonald Hospital Foundation. Who's a key partner in our community. We appreciate all that the Community Foundation does. So we have a check presentation to Georgia McDonald Hospital Foundation. We'll ask Stacy to join us, along with, yes, Chair and Vice Chair. if you join us for our check. And with that, maybe rock and roll.
I know.
Just wanted to appreciate council report for adjudication. I know this is going towards our impact fund, which is going to support our new X-ray rooms that we have replaced, as well as surgical table that's 20 years old. Really appreciate it.
Next is a check presentation to the South Georgia Bay physician recruitment. Again, the positions and the work you provide in the community, we appreciate all you do. Hope that this is a small show of support for all you do. So we'll get our planning chair and vice chair to help support. And Jeff, if you can this. $15,000 for your reward.
Speaking, thank you to council for your ongoing support of physician recruitment, both for the community and the hospital. Would like to introduce Freddie Cook, our new physician recruitment and credentialing specialist, brings a wealth of experience in credentialing and recruitment to our community. So welcome, Freddie, and thank you to council.
Our next item on our agenda is we have a couple presentations. Our first presentation is presentation of urban metrics. And a review of our market gap analysis study, which we began last fall. So by our presenters, thank you.
Good evening, your worship, members of council, staff. My name is Peter Toma. I'm a consultant with the firm Urban Metrics. We were retained by the Penetanguishene to undertake a market gap analysis for downtown. And so we've submitted our report, and I'm here tonight to basically walk you through very quickly through the key findings and the actions that we've identified. So I'm going to keep it very high level. Copy of the report has been submitted. We've had an opportunity to discuss it quite fulsomely with committee and staff, and we're hopeful that this action plan provides the right information and the right direction to facilitate the ongoing improvement of the downtown Penetanguishene, which, everybody in this room for sure, feels a kinship. So, next slide.
So for our members, our presentations and screen behind you, so when we built this, we didn't have it ready for presentations in 2023, so.
If everybody wants to pivot their chair. Okay, so quickly on project background. So our marching orders were quite simple and straightforward. Next slide, please. So the consultants were really asked to develop a strategy and action plan that supports the existing business community to increase the commercial occupancy. It was identified that, some chronic vacancy was an issue, and coming up with a strategy to alleviate some of the commercial occupancy issues. And finally, to attract new commercial establishments to the core. Next slide. So we followed a pretty straightforward consulting process. We launched the project. We looked at all the background documentation. We investigated the demographics of the market, the residents, the seasonal residents, tourists. We took a really close look at the commercial inventory, so the composition of merchants on the street, and we benchmarked that against other comparable scale municipalities and municipalities that have a similar size and makeup of with a strong seasonal dimension as well. So we analyzed those benchmarks. We did a survey. We connected with over 200, I think about 250 residents, provided insights. We're quite pleased that we had a really high level of engagement from the community. We conducted surveys with merchants, and we basically took our inventory and we measured it on a per capita basis, which is a pretty standard approach in terms of doing commercial market feasibility work. We refined our findings through the results, and then we submitted our report. Next slide. So looking at a trade area, so we looked at the key geography around using a trade area population, which we define simply as the population of Penetanguishene, and augmented it with estimates of inflow for seasonal residents and tourists and that kind of stuff. The key market area that we were looking at was really basically the main commercial strip from the gateway all the way down to the bottom, and looking at the composition of retail uses within it. Next slide. So in terms of the market overview, next slide. The market sounding findings are really summarized on this one slide. We'd asked residents and other stakeholders around what the ideal function of the downtown should be, and no surprise, people wanted to see a downtown that provided good shopping opportunities, and they also wanted to see events. We asked what the drawbacks were, and they said that the selection of retail and the state of repair of some of the buildings, which were some of the drawbacks that were keeping them from visiting the downtown or using the downtown as much as they could. In terms of overrepresentation and underrepresentation of stores, we heard from the public that the cannabis stores were something that they didn't want to see any more of, whereas they wanted to see more apparel stores. And in terms of the challenges, vacancy, walkability, lack of cohesion were identified as challenges. And then improvements was looking at more variety of retail, trying to increase the amount of entertainment uses in the downtown, and also food and beverage. So look, that's kind of a broad brush in terms of like what the public expectations are in terms of what they'd like to see in the downtown. So in the downtown, like the downtown commercial area, next slide, please. So if you were to think about the downtown commercial area, that strip of commercial area has about 265,000 square feet. And 265,000 square feet, if you were actually to pack it all together, it would essentially look like two Walmart stores. Like a typical Walmart store is around 130,000 square feet. So if you actually packaged all of that into big boxes, that's what it would look like. And so it's actually quite a significant amount of retail. Like it's a healthy amount of retail on a per capita basis. And in terms of the composition, about half of it is services. And we looked at the composition food stores, non-food stores, services and beer, wine, liquor. And then we essentially, next slide, we looked at the way in which the composition of retail uses play out, and then we measured that against the size of the market, as well as how much population growth there will be over the next 10 years. We just looked at that at a 10-year period of time. So when you take into account where the population will be and the amount of visitation through the town, we came up with estimates of how much additional commercial space could be added to the downtown. And the good news is that across almost all commercial categories are shown in green. And I know the text is a little bit small there, and I apologize, but across all commercial categories, with the exception of beer, wine, and liquor, because you've already got a liquor store, you've already got a beer store. And then on the culture, entertainment, and recreation, and largely because you have a large bingo hall, and you also have a number of entertainment establishments. With the exception of those, all of the other commercial categories are green. And so whether it's food stores or furnishing stores or general merchandise stores or pharmacies, there's actually a need on a per capita basis for more. So when you actually compare what you would typically find in a community of this size versus the reality of what exists on the ground, the good news is that there's runway for additional growth across virtually all categories. And I think what this demonstrates is, and the useful part of this is that this will provide an opportunity for Penetanguishene to explain to businesses that yes, there is actually a market opportunity for the businesses that they're looking for when we have an independently validated that. So in terms of situational assessment, I'm not going to go too deep into the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. I mean, we've looked at that, but essentially we can just go to the action plan, because I don't want to take a significant amount of time. If we could just go to the action plan. So going back to our marching orders, we essentially had 3 marching orders. How do we support the existing businesses that we have? How do you provide them with the preconditions that they need to succeed? The second thing is how do you increase commercial occupancy or reduce commercial vacancy? Is the second thing. And then how do you attract new businesses to the core of the downtown? And the next slide. So we essentially created what we're calling 5 core action items of the plan, and these are really the key things that the town ought to be doing to get behind, in terms of like how do you provide additional animation and energy to the downtown area. We talk about branding and rebranding downtown Penetanguishene as a distinct district. We talked about, we recognized that there have been significant improvements to the downtown already, and those are 100% visible to anybody who, as soon as you come into town, you can see that there's something new, something fresh happening on the main commercial street. But you can't just stop there. We're going to have to continue to invest and look for improvements to make sure that you're improving the look and feel of the downtown. So the work's not done. There's more that can be done, and looking for ways and means to continue to invest in the look and feel of the downtown. The third thing is essentially improving the connectivity of the waterfront, the Discovery Harbor, and the downtown. Like, we know there's a hill issue and all of that stuff, but so we've come up with a couple actions which we believe, we can help make sure that we're connecting all of the dots, and that you're giving people an opportunity to get around town as freely as possible. 4 is to create a more cohesive retail streetscape. Right now, the streetscape is a little bit disjointed. There's a lot of the way the buildings have evolved over time. There's a lack of rhythm onto some of the blocks, and the inclusion and the conversion of residential uses in some of the storefronts is, I think, problematic. Talk about that a little bit in more detail in a second. And then the fifth thing is about the targeted business recruitment campaign. So in terms of all of the action items, I don't really want to go through all of these items because I feel that they've been captured in the report, but I want to see, the creation of a downtown destination, shop local campaigns, making available micro grants. That those grants are essentially used to fund pilot programs that will help establish new businesses specifically within the downtown. And they don't necessarily need to be storefronts. They could be cultural. They could be cultural entities, activations. They could be a whole series of things, but that they're targeted micro grants for things that are going to happen in the defined downtown area. Great. 2 slides. Yeah. I should go back to the second one. Yeah, and so in terms of the ongoing commitment to prioritize public investments, as I said, just continuing on, moving the agenda on the look and feel downtown, so promoting interesting windows, making sure that there's regular refresh, trying to get the business community to work together on those storefront refreshes. Finding ways to celebrate longstanding businesses through some sort of formalized mechanisms to make sure that those people feel that they are part of the community in a big way. We know the public art program, looking for opportunities to continue to integrate public art into the Main Street fabric. Next slide. In terms of the improving connectivity between the downtown waterfront and other parts of town. One thing we think that a lot of municipalities right now are moving toward pilot programs or all in on micro mobility platforms, scooter programs, e-bikes, bike sharing, those kind of things that are municipally run programs, or they're piloted by, or they could be piloted through a micro grant, but basically making micro transportation options available to the people. It's a good way to get people, out of their cars to see new ways to get around town. We also talk about permitting snowmobiles as a potential opportunity through the winter season to park on Main Street. Talk about consistent branding and signage throughout the downtown. I think that is that's a vital part of the plan, and looking for ways to and I know there are walking tours, but just moving that walking tour around, getting around town, seeing the all of the things this town has to offer, it would be a huge move. Create more cohesive retail streetscape. I talked about discouraging the conversion of retail and commercial storefront properties to residential uses, and I know that there's a residential housing shortfall crisis. And I know it's important to do that, but once the Main Street is so important, keeping commercial storefronts as storefronts is vitally important. And I would suggest that you're looking for ways to bring, where possible, bring some of those residential units back into commercial use. I think that is that's a recommendation that I will make to this council, considering commercial occupancy incentives and doing an empty storefront tour, and that's essentially aligned with the next items we're going to start at 5 is to develop a targeted business recruitment campaign. And so what the county the town should be looking to actively present itself to businesses at national and regional franchise shows. Being able to get in front of businesses and demonstrate that Penetang has the market dynamics and has specific market opportunities within those categories, provides an opportunity to reanimate some of those storefronts. And I think there are some opportunities on the main street that you could definitely fill and demonstrate that, you know, those categories are actually underrepresented. And I've probably gone over my time, but I think that I'm gonna stop it there. So those are essentially the 5 things.
Any members of council have any comments or questions for our presenter? Councilor Walker.
Thank you. Just a question with respect to some of your research. Did you talk to building owners down there, specifically maybe absentee building owners that you say reside outside of Penetang?
Unfortunately, we weren't able to connect with them, and I wish we were able to engage them in a better way, but you know, that is a problem that, you know, lots of communities like rural space that there's, you know, that there's a lack of incentive to actually occupy spaces, and so no, I didn't.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you very much. Appreciate you coming tonight. Moving on, 9D, we have a delegation from Royal Victoria Hospital. The CEO Gail Hunt regarding partnering for our health future. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me. Very familiar face on here. Nice to see you again. I did not realize my colleagues from UVJ would be here to echo me. So
Well, they wanted to check, so they were here, first.
we did for hand out checks, so that's like. I don't know how they got on the agenda before. I was able to get one.
He comes every meeting.
Jason, nice. So thank you so much for having me, Gail Hunt, President and CEO of RVH. Some of you may remember me from my previous role here at GBGH. And of course, joining me today is Jason Rayner, our new Vice President of Strategy and Communications and External Relations. So we're pleased to have an opportunity to talk to you about the future of RVH, even though we're not being a check. And I think you're probably wondering, you know, what does RVH future have to do with the residents of Penetang and North Simcoe? So after all, you have an excellent community hospital taking care of your citizens. I know as an insider, that's true as well. But the fact is RVH does provide advanced services and regional programs like cancer, and cardiac care, and they all play a vital role to the residents in this community. And we do work hand in hand with both hospitals. GBGH and RVH work together to ensure all the residents of North Simcoe have access to excellent care close to home. So next slide. So for over 125 years, we partnered for RVH has been there for generations of regions, families, and newcomers alike, and we now operate a regional health center that's open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And in 2022, actually, we cared for almost 190,000 patients, and 14,500 of those were from North Simcoe, which we count as Midland, Penetang, Tiny and Tay, Christian Island. And that's just about under 8% of our overall patients and almost 29% of North Simcoe's entire population that's serviced by RVH. So next slide, please. Lois Nazi is of Tiny Township was one of those patients. In November 2020, Lois went to the emergency department at GBGH for what she thought was pneumonia, and the ER physician there suspected something else. He immediately sent a referral to the Simcoe Municipal Regional Health Center at RVH, and within 2 days, Lois had an appointment, and the test confirmed the worst, that her cancer was back after 20 years in remission. Fortunately for Lois, RVH was close by and had the expertise and advanced technology to treat her, and she still receives cancer treatments at RVH, as do 1,430 of her fellow North Simcoe residents, including 325 residents of Penetang. But most importantly, she's not spending hours on the highway to and from treatments out of the region. Instead, she's living at home in her cherished community, surrounded by her loved ones, enjoying her life and keeping up with her favorite activity of golf. And I think we can all agree, next slide, please. The people of Simcoe Muskoka deserve the best, most advanced care close to home. And to make that happen, community hospitals like GBJH work together with RVH, the regional health center, to facilitate a continuum of patient care. GBGH is counted on to provide immediate healthcare needs, while RVH is counted on to provide that specialized and advanced needs when required. And every hospital in the region needs access to timely care for these regional programs for their patients. So the bottom lines are it's critical to the healthcare system across the entire region. And I'll ask Jason to come up and tell you a little bit more about these regional programs and how important they are to the people of Simcoe and Penetanguishene in particular. Because I know my colleagues are very eager to hear the presentation.
Hi, members of council, delightful to be here. Thanks very much for having us. Yeah, so as Gail said, I'd just like to talk a little bit more about some of our specialized programs. As you see there, diagnostic imaging, of course, is one of the critical provisions of service, both at the community hospital, but also at RVH. We actually saw 1,000 patients from Penetanguishene, which of course, as you know, is about 10% of your population, that were involved with some advanced diagnostics, which is really critical. Next slide, please. It was great to see the proclamation for child and youth today's agenda. Child and youth mental health, of course, is something that's touching so many families, and it really is on the rise. That's not just anecdotal. We know that data is there. 3,400 children since 2018 have accessed those services at RVH. 3,400, and in 2022, 15 young people from Penetanguishene faced mental health crisis and required specialized treatment at our facility. So critical that those services are available when they need to be available for those children and their families. As well, cardiac care, as Gail mentioned, so over 500 patients from Penetanguishene made use of those services last year. 6 residents received life-saving treatment thanks to what we call our code-STEMI protocol. And that's basically an arrangement between RVH and other hospitals and the paramedics in Simcoe, Muskoka, that basically says that when 911 calls come in for a patient with heart attack symptoms, they're transported directly to RVH's cardiac center. And this helps so many more patients reach the hospital within that gold standard of 120 minutes. That's sort of the magic window to be able to have positive outcomes. You know, the reality around cardiac is that really it's between South Lake and Sudbury, so other than RVH. So it's just critical that we have that really, really close to home. And otherwise, if it's over 2 hours transportation, the outcomes are significantly worse. Next slide, please. Also, so just in summary, kind of to wrap it, in terms of the numbers, we saw in last year about 3,000 patients from Penetanguishene right at RVH. And not to repeat Gail, but you know, we really do believe that in this partnership between the community hospitals and the regional programming. We do have some significant priorities that we're tracking right now. 4 that I'd just like to share with you really quickly. 2 of those 4 actually will make great progress. So in January 23, we received operational funding for our 3rd MRI machine, which will be operational in the next 24 months. This will really help. There's a significant backlog for MRI diagnostics. Currently, there are 8,500 patients waiting for that service, which is part of the reason why, at least at RVH, they run 24 hours a day, 5 days a week. 700 of those patients that I just mentioned, actually, that are waiting on the 8,500 list are cancer patients. Similarly, one of our other priorities that we're working on right now is the PET-CT scanner. So this is very sensitive, advanced technology that uses molecular imaging to provide diagnostics. So it's the only one in the region. It arrived. You can come and sort of see it in our lobby if you're interested. It's got boarded up. So anyways, it's there. It arrived on the site. We actually had a party. Anyway, it's very exciting. what that will translate to is about 750 patients not having to travel to Toronto or somewhere else to get the PET scanner, which we know is really, really important. We hope to have that operational by this fall. Two other outstanding priorities that we're working on is a 15-bed critical care unit expansion at RVH, as well as 15-chair dialysis expansion that we're working on right now. And those submissions are in with the provincial government, and we're waiting for those approvals to move forward. Next slide, please. So one more, sorry. Thank you. As you may have heard, RVH is working on an expansion plan, one system, two sites, which will see a new south campus in Innisfil and a significant expansion, basically a doubling of the current RVH size in Barrie. And this will help to expand those critical regional programs, right? Cancer, cardiac, youth mental health, and so on, which will really significantly help reduce our wait times and address what is unfortunately still a reality of hallway medicine in our hospitals. I know we don't like to talk about it because it's clearly been a priority of the provincial government to end hallway medicine, but unfortunately it still exists, and we're still working hard to address the population growth that's coming to the region in Simcoe Muskoka. Next slide, please. So we're not here for a check, if that wasn't obvious by now, all kidding aside, but we are here for an ask, which is your advocacy. Those two programs that I mentioned, the critical care unit and the dialysis expansion, are sitting with government. And so advocacy is needed with our provincial members of provincial parliament, with the Ministry of Health. So to the extent that you're involved in those conversations, I know your worship, mentioned that you were speaking with one of the ministers recently on another topic. The more we can talk about the needs and moving along the approvals that are required and the grant funding that's needed to move these projects forward, it's really, really critical. So we're asking for the advocacy at the provincial level, as well as the regional level. So at the county center. These conversations are there. And listen, as a former CAO of the town of Innisfil and the city of Windsor, the movement of municipalities into the healthcare sector, I know is uncomfortable for some of us, but I don't think the trend is going to go the other way, because the province is basically looking to municipalities to say, how can you work on healthcare and support it together? So I think the advocacy though piece is critical for us. How do we lobby and essentially advocate for those changes and those approvals to come through? So we're happy to provide more information anytime, but I'll just leave you with another great patient story. By the way, they consent to letting us share this, so it's just so John Ferrier is from Midland. So he was diagnosed at RVH in February 2022 with aplastic anemia, which is full bone marrow failure. He required a unique treatment that was only actually available at Princess Margaret Hospital down in Toronto. But because of RVH's cancer program, he didn't have to stay at Princess Margaret through the entire recovery. So just after 4 days, he was actually able to be transferred back to RVH, where our highly skilled cancer team was able to monitor him and support him. And he's actually now in full remission. This picture was taken, I think it's a selfie, back in March of this year, after his monthly blood work at RVH with his granddaughter Jory and his wife Maureen. So they're just delighted with his care that he was able to receive at RVH. So happy to take questions, comments, leadership, members of council, but otherwise we really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. The members of council have any comments or questions? Councilor Waters.
I used the facilities down the road. Actually, I was born in the old hospital. I've taken people down there, probably spent over 70 days in the last 2 years in hospital. And I just want to let you know that the staff down there, not just the doctors and stuff, but people mopping the floors. If you have any questions, you ask them, they'll take you right where you want to go. It's just excellent service.
Yeah, comments or question? Thank you very much, Jason. Thank you, Gail. Matthew, Nicole, thank you for all your work and and all your staff. We appreciate all you do for our community. So thank you for coming tonight and sharing the good work you're doing. Thank you. All right, we're gonna move on to our next item on the agenda. Number 10 is the adoption of minutes not already confirmed. We have a motion that the following minutes of the council meetings be confirmed and adopted as circulated. Council for April the 12th, 2023. Special council for April the 12th, 2023. And special council for April the 26th, 2023. I'll look for a mover. Councilor Waters, second, Deputy Mayor LaRose. Any comments or questions on the minutes as presented? Councilor Rush.
For the minutes of the, the council meeting, there's an error in the, when in respect to 11 matters for consideration. Councilor Redwall person is noted twice rather than Deputy Mayor LaRose is saying, and that was for the appointment to the town document.
Thank you, Councilor Rush. I'll look to our clerk that that's been updated and revised, I'm sure. Do we do the move? Thank you, Councilor Rush. Any other comments? Call for a vote, with that mild, update from you, Councilor Rush, all in favor? And opposed? No, carried. Number 11 is our consent agenda. It's recommended the following consent agenda items having been given due consideration be received for information. A is a memo from the planner regarding committee appointments. Regarding administrative monetary penalties bylaw, short-term rental bylaw, property standards bylaw, line fence viewers act. All for me. Councilor Marshall, and seconder, Councilor Waters, comments or questions? Seeing none, we'll call for the vote. All in favor? And opposed? And that is carried. 12 is matters for consideration. 12 is the site plan control bylaw. So the site plan bylaw 2014-30 proposed housekeeping bylaw amendment PL 2023-26 of the council of town of Penetanguishene amend the site plan bylaw 2014-30 in accordance with the staff report PL 2023-26. All for mover, Councilor Vadavunker, seconder, Councilor LaRue. Any further comments or questions? Seeing none, we'll call for the vote. All in favor? And opposed? And that is carried. 13 is our presentation and consideration of the report for committee of the whole regarding April 12, 2023. The first item is the committee report for Recreation Community Services, and I'll turn it to you, Councilor Waters.
Sorry, I'm not prepared.
That's okay. We have a motion that the recommendations contained within the committee of the whole report regarding the Recreation Community Services section be approved. A mover, Deputy Mayor Rose, seconder. Councilor Marshall will call for the vote. Or sorry, any comments or questions? Seeing none, we'll call for the vote. All in favor? And opposed? That is carried. The next item is regarding the Planning and Development Services section. I'll turn it to our chair, Councilor Vadavunker.
Sorry, thank you. Whole syllables there.
Yeah.
Committee, thank you. Committee dealt with 4 consent agenda items. The highlight was the memo from the Director of Planning and Community Development on the first quarter Planning and Community Development Department update. The department report provides an indication of how busy the department is in processing zoning and subdivision applications, as well as the high number of building permits that have been issued so far this year. We dealt with 2 items. We dealt with a proposed Discovery Harbor license agreement update for the sign located at Broad at the intersection of Drury. That'll be considered later in the agenda. And committee dealt with the 2023 heritage tax rebates for the 2022 year involving 3 properties. Property tax rebate is a maximum of 40% of the amount of approved eligible investment in the property. There was 1 new referral item, Your Worship, that we dealt with, and it has to do with a request for an information report to committee on how barrier-free parking was enforced in the municipality. Those are the highlights.
Thank you so much, Councilor Vadavunker. So we have that motion that the recommendations contained in the committee of the whole report relating to Planning and Development Service section be approved. Moved by Councilor Vadavunker, a seconder. Councilor Rush. Further comments or questions? Seeing none, we'll call for the vote. All in favor? Opposed? And that is great. Next is our recommendation regarding transportation environmental service section. We'll turn it to Councillor Marshall for the committee report.
Thank you, your worship. On the consent agenda, we have 3 items. We shared a notice of the public meeting regarding the Payette water system, which was held 2 weeks ago. Second was the transit report, and third was the electric vehicle charging station usage update report. In terms of matters for discussion, the Harriet Street reconstruction award to Macon, which was then further adjusted at the special council on April 26th for a change in the fee in that tender. The second piece was the award of the asphalt resurfacing tender to Georgian Paving, which was a local organization. And the third was the transit system report proposing to proceed with free transit for our riders, our senior riders in the community.
Thank you very much, Councillor Marshall. We have recommendation contained within the committee of the whole report relating to transportation environmental services section be approved with the exception of 6B1 Harry Street reconstruction tender, ENG 2023-02, which was ratified by special council on April the 26th, 2023. So moved by Councillor Marshall, second by Councillor Roux. Further comments or questions? I have one, I'll just turn to our CEO. Councillor Marshall brought up about the transit. I'm just wondering if we have some further communications for the community about how that will roll out in timeline, what the community can expect on.
Sure, thank you, Worship. We can ask Public Works Director Brian Murray to take that, and then I'll happy to fill in any gaps if there are any. Thank you.
Thank you, your worship, subject to ratification tonight, we will be working with our partners in the town Midland, our operators. Utilizing some of the same communications that they use when they roll their program. And so that will happen over the next few months in getting the notices out, making sure that any communications to our seniors happen during that time and posted on our transit buses. So that our ridership is aware, and then obviously seamlessly transitioning into that program for the period shown.
Brian, when would people expect it to be effective? What would be an effective date?
Right now, just in discussion with our counterparts in Midland, they took about a couple months to work out the process, and they recommended the same for us to ensure that there's, you know, all the bumps and hiccups are worked out. But essentially we'll follow the same process that they've laid out, so we'll be utilizing that and learning from their mistakes and improvements, and so we'll use the same, and I'm expecting sometime in August, kind of focusing on the beginning part of August for the rolling of the program.
Thank you very much. Any further comments or questions? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, your worship. We did apply for a grant to help with it. And I know at our last meeting, we had not been informed whether it was a yes or a no. I'm just wondering if you have any more info on that.
Thank you, your worship, to Councilor Rose. As of today's date, we haven't heard anything in terms of whether we've got the grant or not. We'll continue to follow up with them, but as of right now, we haven't heard.
Sure, thank you. CEO Lees.
Thank you, Worship. This is not what I was going to provide, but I would suggest the old adage, no news is good news, is probably not the case in this particular grant application case. But just a couple additional points, if I can just add on to what Brian's already updated. Sarah has confirmed for us that there is a news release that's prepped, so that will be, you know, in tandem with Brian and his team, as well as updates for the website. There is our WhatsApp newsletter that goes out in July. Signage, as Brian alluded to, not only for transit, but also our facilities, as we kind of work out these processes, though that will all reflect those various pieces that kind of need to form that puzzle of the rollout. Thank you, Worship.
Any further questions? Well, thank you, Jeff and everyone for all your work on this. I know there's a lot of work yet to come, but appreciate all the work from done. We have the motion, we have the move and second, we'll call for the vote. All in favor? And opposed? And that is carried. And finally, we have our finance and corporate service section. I'll turn it to Councillor George.
Certainly. So the finance and corporate services section had 4 items on the consent agenda, and the first was the police services board meeting minutes. Secondly, we had an update provided regarding the community safety and wellbeing plan. We also had an update that was provided regarding the community-based strategic plan. And finally, we received a memo from the treasurer, indicating that the town's 2023 contribution to the Economic Development Corporation of North Central was reduced by 50% as a result of the inconsistent municipal contributions between the four North Central municipalities. So this represented over $40,000 reduction. There were also three matters for consideration. The first was a report to bring forward 2022 capital projects to the 2023 capital budget for project completion. The second was the adoption of the 2023 tax rate levies and budget estimates. And finally, the third was financial updates on 51 Dunlop Street, including the revised internal loan that is required for the cost incurred for the purchase, demolition, abatement, and review of 51 Dunlop. And that's it.
Thank you, Councillor. The recommendation contained within the committee of the whole report relating to finance and corporate service section be approved. Moved by Councillor Brush. Do I have a second? Deputy Mayor Rose. Further comments or questions? See none, we'll call for the vote. All in favor? And opposed? That's carried. 14 is a presentation, consideration of reports regarding special committees. 14A is a special committee of the whole report from April the 19th, 2023. That the recommendations contained in the special committee of the whole report for April the 19th, 2023 be approved. Look for mover. Councillor Leroux, second by Councillor Marshall. Further comments or questions? Seeing none, we'll call for the vote. All in favor? Opposed? That is carried. 15 is motions of which notice has been previously given. We have none. 16 is notice of motion. Do any members have a notice of motion? Seeing none. 17 is consideration of bylaws. That the council of the town of Penetanguishene introduce the following bylaws: 2023-21, 2023-22, 2023-23, 2023-24. That the bylaws be read a first time, deemed to be read a second and third time, and carried. Look for a mover.
Sorry, Your Worship, I think we normally will read the actual titles of each bylaw.
Happy to.
Wanted to make sure.
Happy to. So bylaws 2023 being a bylaw to adopt the budget estimates of all sums required for year 2023. 2023-22 being a bylaw to set the rates of taxation for the year of 2023. 2023-23 being a bylaw to repeal and replace the bylaw 2022-50 to authorize the execution of a loan from the Hydroelectric Commission Reserve Fund for funding required for the purchase of 51 Dunlop Street. 2023-24 being a bylaw to authorize the entering into a license agreement with the Oconee Historical Parks for the provision of signage. 2023-25 being a bylaw to amend the site plan control bylaw 2014-30 for the town of Penetanguishene. Now the bylaws be read a first time, a second, and being read, first time and deemed to read a second, a third time and carried. I look for a mover. Deputy Mayor LaRose, second Councillor Badabunker. Further comments or questions? So then we'll call for the vote. All in favor? And opposed? That's carried. And 18 is our Simcoe County update. I'm going to turn to the Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Worship. We just have three quick ones. April 25th, down at the county, there was an approval of 176 unit low income unit being built at the Rose Street location. If everybody remembers where the old OPP station and the 400 meets. So the county is working on that. I'm sure it's going to take a while, but it was very good news. As the mayor alluded to earlier, we were talking trash all day down there. And it was very interesting to find out we collect about 104,000 tons of garbage. But the good news is that our organic collection, the green bins came out, rose by about 9%. And that's very good to hear. And that puts us in second place in the entire province for organics collection. So that's a good sign. And I guess last Tuesday or this Tuesday, when we were down there, we had a lengthy presentation from Lakehead University. And when they opened up approximately 10 years ago, they opened with 200 students. Now they're at 2,100 students. And they're looking to build another academic building on the site. So it was nice to see that there's a large portion of our local high school graduates that are getting down into there doing their thing, so it's very exciting for that. And that'll do it.
Thank you, Mayor. Number 19 is our question period from the media and public. Do you have any questions from anyone this evening? Seeing none. 20 is announcements and inquiries. I'll turn to any members of council have any announcements or inquiries. No. Do you have staff, any announcements or inquiries? I just have one. I just want to further tug a thread that the deputy mayor was saying during our waste education day at the county last week. A couple things that really resonated with me. We were talking about garbage. We were talking about how the province proper has 11-year life cycle left for landfill of our garbage. In the county, we have less than 3 years. And really the push is really, we got to be focused on, more diversion to recycling and organics. The deputy mayor spoke that we are in second province, but we got to do more. And we really got to emphasize that we need to be doing more diversion. We got to make use of our recycling, got to make use of our organics, because there's not a lot of life cycle left of our landfills. So there's a lot of things that's going to be coming before us. I know at the county, we've been hearing lots of hot topics that's going to come before us, because no one wants the landfill in the backyard, as we know. But we all got to be recognizing what more can we be doing with our organics. So I really thought that was important. Number 21 is our confirmation bylaw. That the confirmation bylaw 2023-26 be signed and sealed by the mayor and clerk. Vote for mover, Councilor Leroux, seconder, Councilor Badalker. Call the vote, all in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. And 22, looking for a motion to adjourn at 8:21, moved by the deputy mayor, seconded by Councilor Rush. All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you very much, everyone. We'll reconvene as committee of the whole in like 4 minutes. Maybe water, bathroom, move around, and then we'll get situated and then we'll be good.
So have the leaves scored yet?
That's the. All right, we're gonna call our committee of the whole meeting for Wednesday, May the 10th, 2023 to order at 8:30 p.m. Here's our approval of the agenda. It's recommended that the committee of the whole agenda for May 10th, 2023 be approved as presented. Looking for a mover, Councilor Badalker, second, Councilor Marshall. For the comments, call for the vote. All in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Number 3 is declaration of pecuniary interest. Either now or at the time of any members of council have a declaration of pecuniary interest. Seeing none. Number 4 is presentations and delegations. We have one regarding the wastewater pollution control plans annual report for 2022. Brian.
Thank you, Your Worship. My pleasure tonight to present the annual report for the wastewater division. This is an annual report that we do every year that we submit to council for approval, and also to the Ministry of the Environment and Conservation and Parks. Next slide, please. So this is a report for both of our sewage treatment plants, as we have one at Main Street, one at Fox Street, and it also will present the findings for our 5 pumping stations, inlet stations, and found that the wastewater division also maintains and operates on an annual basis. Next slide, please. So as an executive summary overview of last year, we had a very great performing year at both plants. Both plants met the C of A certificate of approval requirements for loadings for phosphorus, nitrogen, total suspended solids that are outlined within each of the Fox Street and Main Street plants C of A requirements. We also met the annual loading requirements that are guidelines that our Severn Sound Environmental Association recommends that we meet for loadings in the harbor as well. So overall, the effluent quality was excellent this year, and there were no regulatory exceedances on a monthly basis. Overall, the flows at the plants decreased on an annual basis compared to the previous year, 2021. In particular, we've seen over the last 5-6 years since the Main Street reconstruction, the biggest decrease in flows due to the replacement of the sanitary sewer at the bottom of Main Street. We saw a very drastic reduction in the flows at the Main Street plant, because of the replacement of those, old leaking pipes. So on average, between both plants combined, we've seen a reduction of about 11.8% between both plants combined. And obviously some good news for 2022 and the last several years, we've had no bypasses to report. Next slide, please. This slide that you see in front of you this evening is a summary of the bypass volumes in hours. So we have on the left the total volume of bypasses dating back to 2010. And then all the way to 2022. So as you can see, the last few years, we've had no reported bypasses in terms of volume. And that's tertiary or secondary and primary bypasses. On the right-hand side of the screen, you can see the bypass hours for both plants. So it dates, we've had on the left side of that graph, you can see it dates back all the way to the 70s, where we had quite a bit of combined sewer bypasses in the past. But as you proceed to the right, over the last 10, 15 years, we've had a very drastic reduction in combined sewage bypass hours. And with the upgrades of the Main Street plant that has been recently completed back in 2016, and the installation of a stormwater equalization tank, we've seen even further reductions in the amount of bypass events that we see. Next slide, please. Spills reported is required on an annual basis to the Spills Action Center. Last year alone, we had 4 reported spills at the Main Street sewage treatment plant. They were all for the same item, which is they reported a petroleum product sheen on top of the aeration tanks, which was all contained inside the plant, so there was no spills out into the environment. I'm happy to report. When these incidents occur, we provide investigations to kind of track down the source of these spills. Unfortunately, because of the intermittent nature of these spills in the small volumes, it's very difficult to track down in the sewer system because they're not continuous. We feel we've isolated it to a certain catchment within our sanitary sewer system. But because they are so intermittent and it's hard to track, it's hard to pinpoint it to any particular property, but we continue to make those efforts. Next slide. In terms of flow monitoring and flows in general at both plants, the slide kind of provides an overview of the average max day and peak hour flows that the Main and Fox Street SDP plants received last year. Overall, as you can see, the Main Street SDP plant, some of the main notes that I've gone into is that the flows are quite low right now. Actually, they're at the similar flows that we saw in the 1980s. So over 40 years ago, we're seeing the same flows that we are almost 40 years ago. So that's a tribute to the infrastructure renewal that we've done on the Main Street and in the surrounding area, taking out the infiltration and inflow. Extraneous flows from the plant that shouldn't be there and taking up our capacity. Conversely, while the flows at the Fox Street plant were down a bit from the previous year last year, we are seeing an increasing trend in the annual average flows that we're seeing down there. That's attributable to the higher groundwater table that we're seeing on the Fox Street sanitary sewers, and it's actually creating a lot more inflow into the sanitary sewer system. So we tracked down some leaks in that pipe, and we're going to be rehabilitating and doing some spot repairs to seal those leaks. But overall, the plants are operating very well and well within their operational capacity. Next slide, please. Biosolids, for those that are not aware of what biosolids are, that's the byproduct of the sewage treatment process, the waste product that we dispose of on farmers' fields. Our sludge or biosolids haulage contractor, Region of Baronia, or ROSE, has hauled and disposed of our biosolids for the past few decades. And we currently have a contract with them. They handle everything from haulage to application through drag lines on local farmers' fields for our biosolids. And they also complete our NASM plans or source material plans that are required by the ministry for us to land apply sewage onto farmers' fields. And with that comes sampling in terms of making sure that the sludge does not violate any concentrations for metals, for example. And with the new upgrades project, while it doesn't have a designation in Ontario, the Class A biosolids that the SDP plant at Main Street produces is, I can safely say, is one of the highest in the county in terms of producing a Class A biosolid. Next slide, please. One thing that we've actually implemented this year, and we have approved through council last year, was the key performance indicators for the wastewater division. As you can see on this screen, the biosolid volumes and haulage costs. So the volumes are on the left hand chart there. You can see dating back to 2010, we were hauling about 11,000 to 9,000 cubic meters of biosolids every year. And with the sewage treatment plant upgrade project, we've actually been able to reduce that to almost about 6,000. And with the chart on the right, you can see these haulage costs have dropped drastically from prior to the STP expansion to where they are right now. And that's attributable to the on-site storage that we provide and no longer being able to, or no longer requiring lagoon storage for our biosolids over winter, which is, as you can see, has saved us a lot of money. Next slide, please. Another KPI that we track for both Main Street and the Fox Street STP plants is the hydro costs. Hydro costs is depending on the plant and the operation, that can attribute about 25% of your overall costs of operating a sewage treatment plant. So it's a significant factor. So on the left hand of the chart, you can see our hydro costs before the expansion. And then the middle portion is when we actually implemented and commissioned the plant with both ATABs online. And with further optimization, we were able to actually decrease the costs with the shutting down, or being able to shut down one of the ATABs and being able to run one, which has brought our hydro costs down considerably. And that's all thanks to the efforts of Mark and his staff at the SDP plant. Next slide, please. So maintenance and calibrations are done every year at the plant. So that's for critical alarms, safety inspections, and gas detection systems. These are all monitored and tracked through our work order system, Mainbox. And those are done and tracked and recorded on an annual basis, which is included in the report. Next slide, please. So these are just some of the photos of the plants. So the top left corner is the biosolids building in the basement where the ATABs are held. And then moving down further, pictures of the headworks building, dirt removal system, and the rotating drum thickener within the biosolid building. Next slide, please. Sewage pump stations. We operate 5 sewage pump stations. I'm happy to report there was no overdose or issues reported at either of those pumping stations. In Jennings Drive, Robert Street West, Duck Boulevard, Navy Lane, and Gilliam are the 5 pumping stations that we operate and maintain. Next slide. And this just photographs of all the locations of each lift station and pump station that we have maintained. Next slide. And last but not least, just like to say thanks to our wastewater team that is the reason why I'm presenting such a great report tonight. Great results for both plants this year. So starting from the top left, we have Pat McClare, Dave Murray, Laura Reimer, and of course, Mark Chagua, our chief wastewater operator. Next slide. And with that, I'd like to say thank you and be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Brian. Members of council have any questions for Brian? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, your worship. Through you, Brian. We used to deal with lot capacity issues. We used to have our planning department would come and say, we want to bring on a new 120 house unit, subdivision within the town. And that precipitated part of the reason that the expansion. So with all the numbers going down for the flows, does that mean we no longer have a capacity issue or that we're able to handle what's on the roads now?
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair, to Councillor LaRose. With the reduction in flows, particularly at the Main Street plant, has allowed us to accommodate more developments than we would have. Expansion was initiated back in 2011. Our flows were probably around 3,500 to 3,700. And I'm looking at Mark to see if that's kind of right around the right mark, but right now we're at about 2,900. So we've seen a huge reduction, and it was almost overnight that we saw once we had JB Enterprises moving up the main hill. I remember actually a call from Mark's saying, geez, the flows are really low, and it's all attributable to the old infrastructure that we replaced during that process, and it really does save us a lot of money. It saves us time, and it saves us a lot of capacity to assign to future growth to pay for that eventual expansion that we're going to see.
Cool, thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Councilor Benaventure.
Thank you, worship. I was gonna follow along the same lines as the deputy mayor, and I think it is quite significant, and I'm glad you highlighted that in the slides, because when you had several slides that talked about reduction in cost for sludge haulage, reduction in cost for hydro, all the benefits of the previous council's decisions to rehabilitate Main Street and rebuild those sewers. So that's a real positive, and it really is nice to see it on an annual basis, the statistics. My question has to do with odor, and if we received any odor complaints in the last year.
Thank you, Councillor Vadwan. In terms of odor complaints, we haven't received any official odor complaints at the sewage treatment plant. Once we receive a complaint, it has to be lodged and reported to the NECP because it's technically considered a spill. Last year, we didn't receive any odor complaints that I'm aware of, and that actually would have been noted in the annual report if we had. But I can confirm that I think at one of the budget meetings, I was approached by one resident in particular that I believe that in the downtown core about some of the odor issues that she was concerned about, and I guess I indicated to her at the time, and I guess what I would recommend to any individual that's watching the presentation tonight, that if there are those odor complaints and issues, that we do a report it immediately so that we can actually date stamp and figure out, okay, well, maybe there was something in the plant that was happening at that time that would have contributed to that, and it allows us to kind of troubleshoot. So that would be my recommendation. But in terms of actual reported spills or incidents, we hadn't had any for quite some time, actually.
Thank you. That's good news.
Any other members, any comments or questions? Thank you, Brian. Appreciate it.
Good job, Mark.
Moving on, 5 is our council information package. Before we call the motion, any members want to move any item from the April 19th or the May 3rd council information package? We'll just second. Councilor Bedwalker.
Thank you, worship. Dealing with the May 3rd council information package, there's an email from a resident that lives on Blueview Drive dealing with road construction, and members of council may be familiar with this because it was on the referral list for a while, and then it was removed when the property sold. That was generating a referral. Well, anyway, the new property owners come in with a new ask, and I'd like to see that referred back to staff. We did talk about it at our section meeting, and there is some information that is being prepared, and I understand that there may be a report coming forward, but at this point, if it could be added to the referral, I can speak to that when we get to that point in the agenda. Thank you.
Any other members, any items on the council information package? I just have one on the April the 19th CIP, and I'll turn to our CEO for any comments. It's 4A CO lease. It's an article from the Township of Perry regarding Bill 5, Stopping Harassment and Abuse by Local Leaders Act. The deputy mayor and I had this come to us at county. There's recommendation from Springwater Council asking that the county endorse that going back to the province. And I know a lot of lower tiers have been endorsing this bill. My understanding is we probably did that here probably last year or last term, but I just want to get your perspective on this and the due diligence of having this council revisit that bill and how we can look at that as a move forward.
Thank you, Worship. So Bill 5 is certainly something that has gained a lot of traction and momentum across the municipal world over the last, I'm going to say 6 to 8 months. You are right. This council, the Town of Penetanguishene Council in the last term did support a presentation that was made by the group that was advocating on behalf of this particular legislation in the local area on October the 12th of 2022. So the previous council, the last term council did support that presentation. And I'm going off memory a little bit, but I do believe it was to support that bill and legislation and push that through the province and the ministry. I think it's, as I believe the previous term of council, and I'm sure everyone would agree, it's key. It's a key piece of legislation. There's really kind of two components to it around requiring members of council and members of local boards to comply with workplace violence and harassment policies. And then if the integrity commissioner finds a contravention, it would give the ability for the commissioner to apply to the court to deem the member's seat vacant. So it is not something that I think should be taken lightly. We've done some training with this council, and as we do every year with the staff council relations policy. So we did that back in December. Training and workshops and kind of furthering everyone's knowledge is something that's top of mind for us. I'd like to take it back as staff just to kind of make sure that if there's further opportunity over the course of this term, that we ensure we are giving it the attention it deserves. The other thing I would say is certainly county council has had some orientation and training, but they also held a session that I know a couple members of council were able to join, which again touched on some of that legislation and the need for respectful relations between boards and councils and staff. So it is certainly something that I think is very key. Obviously, the province felt the same. And, I think it's something that this council could certainly entertain supporting, pushing that through the province. So I'd like to, if we can, happy if council would like to direct staff otherwise, but certainly I'd like to take it back as staff and give that some consideration in terms of should this council be supporting it similar to what last council did, but also at a staff level, just give consideration to how can we keep this front and center as we move forward as a term of council.
I'd be comfortable seeing that when you get time to review that. Any other members, any comments, questions on any of the CIP items? Okay, see none. We have a recommendation that the council information package having been given due consideration to be received for information. And again, that's for the April 19, 2023 and May 3rd, 2023. I'll look for mover. Councilor seconder, Councilor Van. For the comments, call for the vote. All in favor? And opposed? That is carried. Number 6A is our Transportation Environmental Services section. I turn the chair over to Councilor Marshall.
Thank you, Your Worship. On the consent agenda this evening, I have the following recommendation is that the following consent agenda items having been given due consideration be received for information. Memo from the Director of Public Works regarding the truck loading concerns at 95 Main Street, and this is an update. So you'll see that in your council package. It was a memo that was prepared by Brian outlining some of the discussions that have taken place with the Circle K at the corner of Main Street and Main and Robert, with regards to the issues with two trucks that had rolled down. So they have provided us with some information to let us know that they've reached out to all of their vendors who come in and do deliveries, that they have instructed them to load in a different capacity. So that action has been taken. We continue to reach out to them as well with regards to potential barricades and other structural physical barricades. However, there's been no formal response from them, but we do continue to reach out from that perspective. So the thinker, mover. Council.
Speak on.
Yep, as soon as we move it, right?
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, Councillor Duresh, seconder. Councillor Bennett, questions?
I did have the folks at Arbor's Flower Shops speak to me about it. Heard that there's been 2 other incidents. Besides the truck, there was 2 cars that during the winter time that had slid through the intersection on icy roads and climbed onto the sidewalk. Didn't reach the building, but they did. Up the curb going over. I know that barriers, the word barriers considered reciprocated, and I was wondering if at some time when Peel Street is redone, perhaps maybe something as simple as a park bench could be put between the post and the corner, not to stop the truck, and certainly maybe stop the small car.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair, to Councillor Waters. That's certainly something that could be looked at as part of the reconstruction of Field Street, which is on our capital plan. In terms of providing a physical barrier or something of that sort, that could be provided for that those instances.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Any members of the council? Okay, all those in favor that we accept the report? Okay, motion passed. Thank you. Okay, matters for consideration. We have 3 matters for consideration. The first one is the implementation of a new utility alternative locate protocol for GFL Environmental Incorporated, Flex Forward Contract and Roto Mill, ENG 2023-06. Recommendation that council enter into an agreement with GFL Environmental, Flex Forward Contracting and Roto Mill for the implementation and an alternative locate agreement, and that staff be directed to bring forward the necessary bylaws for approval. Any questions or do I do the motion first? Sorry, motion. Can I get a motion to support this? Councilor LaRue, seconder, Councilor Duresh. Questions, comment from any members of council? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carried. Thank you. The second one is with regards to snow removal level of service policy update for 2023 RDS 2023-03. It's the recommended that the updated snow removal level of service policy be approved as presented. Can I have someone to support that motion? Mayor, thank you, Mayor. Mayor Rawson, seconder, Councillor Waters. This particular policy is being updated to reflect the current snow removal standards that are being followed currently by the roads department. It was last updated in 2029, and there's a proposed change under the critical area, which is on page 128 of your packages in terms of the wording. It's been updated to reflect the urgent roads division practice. And again, it is just keeping in line with the current policy. Is there any questions with regards to this report as it's been presented? Seeing no questions, all those in favor? Opposed, motion carried. The third item we have is the minimum maintenance standard for the municipal roads policy update, and that's RDS 2023-08. That the revised minimum maintenance standard for municipal roads policy be approved as presented. This policy, the recommended changes is to reflect once again our current practices. The MMSNR, that's a mouthful, is an Ontario regulation which sets out the standards in which municipalities, highways which fall into municipalities' jurisdiction must be abided. On page 139 of your package, there are 3 particular areas that the changes are being recommended, and again, this is to follow current practice, and that reflects our current practice. It aligns the language in the policy, and the town significant weather a notice as well has been added. Motion, oh, I forgot to do motion to approve. Councilor LaRue, seconder, Deputy Mayor Rose, sorry, questions or comments from council? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? None, motion carried. Item number 4, disposal of surplus asset, RDS 2023-09. It's recommended that the disposal of the surplus assets as identified within the staff report RDS 2023-09 be approved in accordance with the surplus vehicles and equipment policy. Can I get a motion to a motion to approve? Councillor Durush, seconder. Councillor Waters. You'll see in your package, there is a report outlining various town surplus assets for disposal. All of the report sets up all the steps that were followed in terms of the current policy that's in place and how it was followed. There's a list of items which can be found on page 56 of the report. That outlines all of the additional surplus items. Sales of these items will be posted on the government surplus auction site, and funds will be redirected into reserve funds accordingly to each department that those fall under. And this is an enterprise-wide list of surplus items. Any questions with regards to this report? Deputy LaRose.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was just wondering why we ended up with 12 regular trucks all in 1 year that are going surplus. It just seems to me that we used to be able to do 2 or 3 a year and they were staggered. But when you look at the list, there's 12 regular pickup type trucks, you know, not including the bucket truck or nothing like that. So I was just wondering.
Through you, Madam Chair, to Councilor Rose, the number of vehicles and pickup trucks is larger than previous years, and that's due to largely the agreement that we passed last year related to leasing vehicles through the enterprise management system. So as they are sold off through enterprise, we will get that credit and get replacements through the enterprise program.
Cool, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. The last item on is item 5, Wash Bay Engineering, ENG 2023-07. It's recommended that the additional funds required in the amount of $60,255.88 be approved for the redesign of the engineering supply to the facility and to have the structural design loads complete by the building manufacturer that complete the existing building. And that available 2022 Ontario Community Infrastructure Fund money be allocated to complete the 2023 work on the engineering and design phase of this capital project. We are currently at 75% completion of the submission of the design of this this capital project. It was approved in our budget for 2023. It's recommended that we take a look at adding additional upgrades for the electrical services. The advantage of us incurring this cost is that it'll be done before we go out to tender for the whole project for the expansion, therefore saving the town possibly money that any potential additional funds may be added to that work. So this kind of front end loads that we take care of this electrical piece. This also allows for future advancement and additional charging station potentially for the town, future growth as well. Anything more to add to that particular one, Brian?
No, Madam Chair, that was a good summary.
Thank you. I forgot to do the motion. My apologies. Motion, Deputy Mayor LaRue, seconder. Sorry, Councilor Bedemoncourt. Any other questions with regard to that report? I have to call you deputy. No, I apologize.
It's all
I
good.
apologize. I apologize.
Apologize, we apologize.
I'm sorry. Deputy Rose, my apologies. My apologies. Any questions from council? Yes. Go ahead, Councilor Berkeley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good report. I understand the rationale, everything makes sense. There was a comment in the report dealing with electrical service upgrade. And I was just curious whether that upgrade requires a transformer upgrade as well. And has that been included as part of the overall additional cost? Thank you.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair, to Councillor Butler. And the assessment of the hydro service that the electrical engineering consultant will complete as part of this work will almost certainly require a transformer as part of the construction phase of the project. And the cost of the transformer and servicing will be included as part of the construction phase of the project, which is anticipated for next year.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from council? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Referral items, that the Transportation Environmental Services section endorsed the following additional and existing referrals to upcoming agenda items for staff. Future items are stormwater management best practice engineering standard Q4 2022, updated to Q2 of 2023. Traffic calming measures on roads and sidewalks with priority of streets with no sidewalks. That's due for second quarter of 2023. County of Simcoe Transit Connection Service Improvements, that's scheduled for Q2 of 2023. And review of highway and parking bylaw, again, coming back to council Q3 of 2023. Can I get a motion to approve that? No. Councillor LaRue, seconded. Councillor Waters, any questions with regards to those future items or anything to be added? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? None, that is carried. Question period. Any questions from the media or public with regards to this section? Seeing none, I turn it back to you, Richard.
Thank you, Councilor Jones.
Okay.
Moving on to 7B's Recreation and Community Services section, I turn the chair to you, Councilor Waters.
Thank you. And I am prepared. For recreation and community services, we have consent agenda, and I have 2 items. The motion reads that following consent agenda items having been given due consideration be received for information. The first being the Museum and Heritage Advisory Committee meeting minutes, March 9th, 2023. And the second, it has a memo from the Director of Recreation and Community Services regarding the gateway relocation and construction. Henry Award, for doing your package. The memo to the council, relocation and construction, and award May 10th, 2023. Is there anybody that would like to call anything for discussion?
Yes, could we pull the March 9th minutes, please? For discussion.
Give it a second or so.
You don't need that.
Don't need it? Okay.
Yeah, I think understood.
Oh, okay, thank you. So I noticed in the minutes that there was a deputation from Mr. David Dupuy regarding the proposal for private members bill to honor the heritage of Mexican. So he's talking about provincially designated day ahead of time, which should be August 1st. And the committee did pass a motion supporting the proposal for the private bill, and I'm just asking where that goes from these minutes, I guess is, I don't know if anyone can answer that for me. And I know you were there, so maybe you would be best to maybe address it, but I don't know. Just a quick question, as to where that goes, is it coming to council, or does the Heritage Committee have the authority to push that along?
I'm happy to speak to that. So last term of council on the CIP was a letter from Mr. Alexander Roman and David Dupuy regarding this proclamation, provincial proclamation to designate Penetanguishene Day. After this council was sworn in, Mr. Dupuy reached out to me and asked me what was going on with that. There was no move forward from that being confirmed on our CIP. Myself and the CEO of Lee's met with Mr. Roman and Mr. Dupuy, and we spoke about this. And I believe I spoke to members of council individually to see our interest. So we want to move forward with this, but we wanted to bring that to the Museum and Heritage Committee to get their sense and their feeling on this. You're right, from here, we need to, as a council, bring a motion forward. There has been some work done on this. And the bill, Mr. Roman has done with Mr. Dupuy. I'm glad you pulled that because I was gonna pull that as well. My feeling is from here, we would ask staff to bring forward to council next month. The actual recommendation that the Heritage Committee confirmed, which is designating Penetanguishene Day for the August 1st date. And then that would go forward to our member of provincial parliament, and go through the process for provincial designation. If that, helps.
If I could, maybe just to make a comment. I'm totally. I was glad to hear and to read what I saw, but I know that over the past, since we've started, we've talked about incorporating events, more events with the town. We've talked about possibly revisiting, the meeting of people, much like what we had done with the Champagne celebration. So, and if this is the event that we want to put our eggs in that basket, I mean, that's something that certainly will be decided by council, but I would, that would be probably my main concern is that if we're gonna start selecting some main opportunities or main events, then we need to be very targeted and very selected because we can't have 2 or 3 festivals in a row. So if this is what we want to zero in on and really put it all on the table for a summer event, that's fine, but we need to be cognizant that we're talking to things along the way, along the last couple of months, so that I would like to have more discussion about that, I guess, as we move this along. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I think it was just maybe we turn to our CEO. I know there's been work done on this and perhaps bringing the motion to council for discussion at next month. We could look at that.
Through Mr. Chair, yeah, certainly, if that's certainly something that we can do is to look to bring that motion. I think there's been some good points raised by Councilor Rush. Certainly, there is a referral item that's expected in Q3, which, as we all know, is kind of that July to September range. But certainly as staff, we'll have some conversation about how that aligns with the comments that we heard from Councilor Rush. I think there's some good comments there. But I think there's a bit of an appetite, at least from the folks that have brought this forward. And I think I'm kind of getting a sense from council generally that, we can get this in front of council. So certainly we can pick that back and have some conversation, but I don't see any major red flags where we can't get this back to council in June. But being cognizant of the comments that we heard from council today.
Want my assistance just going forward. So what happened is they cut the discussion and no items are being, there's no motion coming forward, it doesn't sound like. Just a discussion, so the items will continue to be received for information. So you can just get right back on track, get a mover and a seconder, and on you go. Okay?
We've got, and then we now now we'll ask for a vote. All in favor? And then carry it. Next we have the matter of consideration, and tonight we have none. So we can move on to referral for our coming agenda. If we want to add or remove anything from the existing ones. There. Seeing none, I'll read the motion. Motion is that the recreation and community service section endorse following 5 existing referrals, pending agenda of staff, first being the Champlain cultural event. Second, the went around with growth and expansion, third, community champion. 4 is the fee waiver request policy, and 5, sign modernization fund report. And the meeting second of the reasons. Betty Merrimer and Council. And we vote, all in favor? And that's carried. And any questions from the media and public? Anybody have anything? Seeing none, I'll pass the chair back to Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilor Waters. Then we're gonna move on to 8C, our planning and community development services section. I'm gonna pass it to you, Councilor Butler.
Thank you, Worship. So we're gonna deal with the planning and community development services, section agenda. The first item is the consent agenda. There's 4 items on the consent agenda. The Committee of Adjustment meeting minutes from March 27, 2023. The Economic Advisory Committee meeting minutes of April 3rd, 2023. And a memo from MHBC Planning, Urban Design and Landscape Architects. Proposed 2023 provincial planning statement. And the last one is a memo from the Municipal Law Enforcement Officer monthly activity report, April 2023. Does anyone have any comments or would like to pull any of these items? Your worship, can I see your hand? Please proceed.
I just want to speak to the second item, the Economic Advisory Committee meeting minutes.
Comment or?
I think just a comment.
Okay, well, proceed.
The minutes speak to, at the committee bringing forward a recommendation from Urban Metrics regarding the branding exercise, and that the committee felt that was important. I just wonder if that's on staff's radar, and is that going to come forward in the future, or do we want to look at adding that as a referral item? I'm just looking for some guidance there, how we can help support that.
Through you, Mr. Chair, there is a component, there is a staff report on the draft market gap study. Part of that report and part of the recommendation, there's kind of 5 components to it. One of the components to the recommendation is that staff be directed to prepare a report on options for a branding strategy. I think certainly, you know, it'd be good to get some clear direction through our strategic plan as well on the branding. So I want to be careful that we're not putting the cart before the horse too much, but also being cognizant of staff resources, that, you know, this is kind of a project that has, you know, I think council generally kind of sees it as a priority, but it's also something that has been kind of plucked mid-year and asked of staff. Certainly staff are happy to do as council directs, but we just need to be cognizant of workload and how that relates to the strategic plan that, as we know, is going to hopefully be endorsed and have a final product kind of closer to the end of summer. So hopefully that answers the question, Mr. Chair, and through to the worship.
Thank you, Worship, and I think I can add a little bit to what the CAO indicated. At section and discussed the gap analysis study report, and specifically with respect to the branding strategy component, and we will be proposing an amendment dealing with incorporating that as part of our review of priorities included in the strategic plan. So we'll be discussing that a little bit later.
Perfect, thank you.
Any further comments on the referral, or sorry, the consent agenda? I just have one comment, and that has to do with the memorandum from MHBC Planning. It's really well done, and I encourage anyone, if they want to get an understanding of some of the changes that the province has implemented to the planning framework in Ontario, the changes that have been implemented through a series of bills. This is an excellent summary, and it covers a broad range of matters that the province has been dealing with over the last few months. And I just encourage anybody who hasn't read it to, if they are interested, to take some time to read it. So having heard the consent items, may I have a mover to Councilor LaRue, seconder? Deputy Mayor LaRose, all those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, the motion carries. Thank you. Moving on to the matters for consideration, we have 6 items for consideration. The first item is the proposed new open air burning bylaw. And the recommended action is that the open air burning bylaw 2012-66 be repealed and replaced by proposed open air burning bylaw in accordance with staff report BL-2023-03. Be passed by council and come into effect as of July 1st, 2023. And I'm going to turn to our director to see if she wants to take this, or the fire chief's going to speak to it, or I know it was a joint effort between municipal law enforcement and the fire department. So I think it's an excellent report, excellent bylaw, but maybe if you want to just hit the highlights and how it came to us today.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. The bylaw are regularly reviewed. And when we looked at this bylaw, there's some changes that need to be required, effectively, they were some of the wordings and the way that we were moving forth the bylaw as well as the final. So we took the current bylaw and looked at what municipally in other municipalities that we're using. The bylaw you have in front of you today is very similar, if not exactly the same as what we see in our neighbor to in Midland. And again, we're trying to be more all-encompassing, addressing all the issues that we found over the years and hoping that we can educate the public so that they can do some open air burning in a safe manner without endangering and bothering others.
Thank you. Any questions about the proposed new open air burning bylaw? Seeing none, I just want to thank staff for acting on this. Was a referral item that I brought forward based on comments that I heard in the community. And as I said, the bylaw is excellent, and I think it's going to go a long way in terms of regulating open burning in our municipality. So thank you for that. We have a mover, yes, Councilor LaRue, a seconder, his worship. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to the second item, it's pertaining to the extended use of sidewalk bylaw revisions. And the recommended action is that the proposed amendments to the extended use of sidewalks bylaw be approved to amend bylaw 2020-42 in accordance with staff report PL 2023-24. And this pertains to patios and open air patios and whatnot. I'll turn it over to our director and she can just speak to the highlights from there. Thank you, Madam Director.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So this was an item that was discussed by the Economic Advisory Committee as well. It was one of their first actions when they came together in February. So we did review this bylaw back at the beginning of COVID in 2020. And made some changes there. What we've done with this revision is taking a look at some of the feedback we received from businesses in downtown, and then largely that's in relation to the patios. So the biggest change I think you'll see in the bylaw is the permission for winter patios. Previously, our bylaw only allowed patios on the municipal sidewalk from May to October. We've made some new inclusion or regulations that would allow patios the winter months from November to May. There are some very strict regulations about when it can be out, when it can be open, as well as gives the authority to the Director of Public Works to require it to be removed during circumstances. So that's a nice change that I think that the businesses will appreciate and look forward to a winter round next year with some patios on our sidewalks.
Thank you, Madam Director. Any questions or comments? Yes, that's the one.
I would just echo that it's great to see, because I think Winter Ram is a great opportunity with having that ability to have those outside. And that looks like there was full collaboration with other departments, which is really important for everyone's safety and other pieces that can be tricky when it comes to winter patios, but that's great to see.
Okay, any further comments? Yes, Councilor Ryan.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. So I would be interested in knowing how many applications we receive over the years for an outside vendor. From how many people, how many businesses?
Through you, Mr. Chair, through Councilor DeRoche, we do receive 3. That has been the top or maximum number of patio applications we've received over the last 3 to 5 years.
Okay, So then it does really affect a very small number of businesses. I guess it would only pertain to a very small number of businesses that we have in our downtown core. So, and I know that it's a big plus for those businesses, but I don't know that, that it's always very visually appealing to see, sometimes when you, at a main corner, you see a lot of maybe not, I don't find that to be extremely attractive, for even like a branding I guess for the main core of a downtown, that's the visual that we have. So, I know that certainly it's an asset to the businesses who actually can make use of this, but I'm not sure that as an overall for the town and all the businesses, that it's an asset. So those are just really my comments.
Thank you, Counselor. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, I'll call for a mover of the recommendation. That's Counselor Marshall, a seconder. Counselor LaRue, any further discussion? Okay, so moved by Counselor Marshall and seconded by Counselor LaRue that the proposed amendments to the extended use of sidewalks bylaw be approved to amend bylaw 2020-42 in accordance with staff report PL 2023-24. All those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, the motion carries. Thank you. The next item is the draft market gap study, and I'll read the recommended action. That the market gap study by Urban Metrics Inc. dated March 24, 2023 be approved in principle, and that staff use the market gap study as a guiding document for future studies, programs, and policies as they relate to the business development in the town of Penetanguishene. And further, that changes to the operating and capital budgets be brought forward during the future deliberations for council consideration. And further, that the market gap study action plan be received for information and discussion. And finally, that staff be directed to prepare a report on options for a branding strategy. So I'll ask for a mover and a seconder at this point to get on the floor. So Councilor LaRue and Councilor Marshall. So it's now on the floor. And are there any questions or comments? Yes, Councilor Marshall.
Mine's more of a comment, and I think there's a bit of a theme that we're seeing in terms of, we're doing all this great work on our strategic plan, and there's, the presentation was really great to see. I love, like, it's like a clear strategy. It's got like 5 objectives. And it ties into, I think, what we're talking about in terms of branding, and we've seen it with Penetanguishene Day. I think there's a lot of really great things going on, and I just hope that we synchronize how we're asking staff to look at this so that we're not maybe putting the horse before the cart and the cart before the horse. I'm not sure. Because to me, this really ties into the work that we're doing in the strategic plan as an organization. And ideally, I would hope we'd have one kind of branding strategy and whatnot. So it's really just more of a comment to say that I really hope that as a council, that in terms of approaches, that we look at what that strategic plan looks like in some of these other pieces, that they tie in, that they blend in nicely, and that we're not creating duplications, if that makes sense. So just an overall comment, but I was really pleased to see that report tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Marshall. Any other comments? Yes, Councilor Doyle.
I would like to also echo that. I thought this is a really good plan. I was, no riveting news or big things that I didn't know, but it was very well done, very targeted strategies to take in place. And I appreciate that within this recommendation, you do talk about staff keeping in mind this plan as they move forward with their day-to-day. And I guess that's again my main message to I guess to all of us is that all of this is doable, and including Penetanguishene Day, including everything that we want to move forward with. But our staff currently have their hands full with day-to-day things. They have no capacity for Kitty Creek. And so with all of these great initiatives, and I think we're all on board and trying to move these forward, we will need to seriously look at our staffing complement so that we can be successful in these plans and these strategies and this community development. We're gonna have to seriously think about who or what strategic players we need to put in play to move these forward. So I look forward to receiving some of that from hopefully from our staff as we start sinking our teeth into these really great initiatives.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other comments? So just, you hinted at this a little bit earlier, we discussed this at length at our section meeting and Councillor Rue and I both agree with members of council that have commented so far that the report is an excellent report. So a really good presentation, but we felt that the branding strategy, the recommendation given with the branding strategy needed to be put in a context, and the context would be our process we're in right now with respect to the development of our new strategic plan. So section and Councilor Rue, basically the amendment is to the last paragraph, Madam Clerk. And it's basically all the words after directed be stricken and the wording replaced be directed to include as part of council's consideration. Be directed to include as part of council's consideration of priorities within the forthcoming strategic plan. Council's consideration of priorities within the forthcoming strategic plan, the creation of a branding strategy. So that council can consider all the priorities that are coming forward and the branding strategy and strike what it views as being the priorities for the community. So Councilor Rue is proposing that amendment that's coming from our section. I'm chairing, so I don't believe I can second it, but may I have a seconder? Yes, Councilor Marshall. So on the proposed amendment, and Madam Clerk, just for clarity, did you capture everything? That's okay. So on the proposed amendment as described, and maybe I'll just read it. And finally, that staff be directed to include as part of council's consideration of priorities within the forthcoming strategic plan, the creation of a branding strategy. Any further comments or questions? All those in favor? Carried. And so now on the motion, the main motion as amended, any further comments or questions on that? Madam Director, anything to add? Nothing? Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Thank you. The next item is zoning bylaw amendment, file number ZA 2-23 pertaining to rezoning of 1056 Fuller Avenue. And there's a report that outlines the results of the public meeting and the recommendation that council adopt the zoning amendment. So we have a mover and a seconder. Councilor Darash, his worship. I'll read the motion that the council of the town of Penetanguishene has determined that zoning bylaw amendment application ZA 2/2023 is consistent with provincial policy statement. It conforms to the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe, the County of Simcoe official plan, and the town of Penetanguishene official plan, and that zoning bylaw amendment application ZA 2/2023 concerning 1056 Fuller Avenue be approved. And further, that council pass a bylaw to amend the town of Penetanguishene comprehensive zoning bylaw 2022-17 to enact zoning amendment 2/2023. For the motion, duly moved and second. Any comments or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, the motion carries. Thank you. And the last item, under matters for consideration is the notice of intention to designate the Penetanguishene Angels. I'll read the recommended action and I'll look for a mover and a seconder. That staff be directed to repeal bylaw 1985-72 in accordance with section 31 of the Ontario Heritage Act. And that staff be directed to designate the Penetanguishene Angels as being of cultural heritage value and interest in accordance with section 29 of the Ontario Heritage Act. May I have a mover, please? That's Councilor LaRue. Seconder, Councilor DeRush. The reports in the agenda. Madam Director, do you have anything to add to the report that's in the agenda?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Quickly just to add that we've looked at this as part of the Gateway Relocation Project that RCS is working on. There was some recent changes to the Ontario Heritage Act also that help necessitate some changes to this bylaw. So we followed the new act in terms of protocol in going through the repeal of the 1985 bylaw and the replacement with a new one for their new location, which will line up hopefully with the project that is unveiled. So that's why we've initiated or bring the staff report for now is to initiate it now to be in a position with the new bylaw for the fall.
Thank you, Madam Director. So, motion, the matter has been duly moved and second. Any further comments or discussion? Seeing, Councilor Waters.
With the Angels, is it the location at the entrance to town that you're referring to, or is it the actual Angels? And if it is the actual Angels, are we talking about the ones that are at the entrance or the ones that are downstairs?
Thank you, Councilor Waters. Madam Director.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, through you too, Councilor Waters. So the original Angels are here at the museum, as well known. So the designation is still capturing the heritage landscape and the monuments that were that are the Angels, and so the designation will be on the new location of the replica Angels.
Thank you, Madam Director. Any further comments or questions? Yes, Your Worship.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Andrew, my question, most of us were at the Heritage presentation the other day, which was well done, and I learned a lot from that. So my understanding is we can't designate per se the statues themselves, it's the land and everything that the land encompasses. My understanding is we can't move and alter the existing Angels while they're designated until council repeals that. So I'm just not clear on the timelines. Like I see the schedule, I don't understand the timelines. If council goes through and repeals the existing one, when does that all line up and then allow us the time to designate the new land where the statues are going to be on the new one?
For you, to Mayor Rawson. So I believe what you're asking is, have the alignment of the process to give notice to pass the new bylaw is in an attempt to line up with the actual physical movement of the Angels. So that I believe, and sort of looking at our director of rec, is something that's project that's happening later this fall. And so the way we've got it aligned right now is the actual bylaw will be passed in September itself. And so the Angels would probably be moving right around that time. Does that answer your question?
Okay, so would September mean the existing bylaw would be repealed and that we can physically move it then?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Director. Any further comments or questions? So having heard the motion, duly moved and second, any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. So we'll go now to the referrals, and there are 5 referral items. There's the review of the municipal accommodation tax, and that is designated to come back in Q2 2023. Vacant commercial property options, and that is to come back in Q3 of 2023. Review the open air burning bylaw, which committee of the whole dealt with today, which means that it would come forward to the June council meeting, so it's going to stay on. So council deals with it. And then the ATV ORV pilot project, reviewing rules and regulations to construct a pilot project to allow ATV and ORVs on municipal roadways. That's going to come back in Q4 2023. Update on bylaw enforcement of barrier-free parking spaces, and that's to come forward in Q2 of 2023. Are there any questions on any of those items or any items to add to the referral? I just have the one, Madam Clerk, and that has to do with that letter or email on the May community information package dealing with the year that I spoke about earlier. They probably used the wording that was there before. And as you've indicated, we don't put a date on it, we just leave it as a referral item. And staff review and bring it back, date. So can I move that to my name? Okay, I'm gonna move that be added as a referral item. And a seconder, please, also Marcia. Any further discussion on that as a referral item? Seeing none, all those in favor? Thank you. So I'll read the motion that the Planning and Community Development Services section endorse the following additional and existing referrals to upcoming agendas and staff. May I have a mover, please? Councilor Roux, seconder, Councilor Duroche. All those in favor? Motion carries. Thank you. Now I'll go to question period from the media and the public. Seeing none, your worship, I'll turn back to you.
Thank you, Councilor Vadabunker. 9D is Finance and Corporate Services section from the chair to Councilor Duroche.
Thank you very much. And so for this evening's meeting, we do have 3 items on the consent agenda. The first has to do with the 2023 financial summary, quarter number 1 financial summary. The second is a 2022 financial indicator review. And the last is a memo from the Corporate Services Executive Assistant regarding our community-based strategic plan update. The recommended action is that the following consent agenda items, having been given to consideration, we receive for information. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Is it moved by Deputy Mayor Rose, seconded by Councilor Waters? Any comments or questions regarding these 3 items? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? It passes. The other items are matters for consideration, and the first item that we have here is regarding municipal tax supported service review, finance report 2023-15. The recommended action is that the town of Penetanguishene municipal tax rate structure to pay equally for all municipal services based on current value assessment of their property remain in effect status quo. Do I have a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Councilor LaRue, seconded by Councilor Marchand. I open the floor to questions or comments. Yes, Councilor LaRue.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Very good report. I understand where staff are coming from. However, we have some rural parts of our municipality that it could be said do not receive the same level of service that our urban counterparts do. And I'm specifically referring to roads and roads capital. And so we have gravel portions of our road portions of our municipality. And I know they're big ticket items, and I know we have an infrastructure deficit. But it just concerns me that in recognition that we're not able to, at this point in time, address some of those gravel portion roads in our community, that those individuals do not receive the same level of service as other members of our municipality. I know, from public works standpoint, they have to plow, they've got to do all of that. Fire service the same. But when we look at some of the capital, it's not equal. So it's just something that I'm concerned about, and I just thought I'd share that with yourself, Madam Chair, and leave it at that.
Thank you. Thank you for those comments. Any other comments? No, seeing none, we'll go to the vote. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. The second item we have is the 2024 budget timeline and survey, which is financed for 2023-16. The recommended action is that the 2024 budget timeline be approved as presented. Can I get a mover and a seconder for that, please? Moved by Mayor Crossan, seconded by Deputy Mayor Rose. I'll open the floor to questions. Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? And the motion carries. Our third item is the staffing request, clerk's report 2023-05. The recommended action is that the records management coordinator position and job description be amended to the title of deputy clerk as presented, and that $10,000 in the current budget for records management contracted services remain until the end of 2024 to assist with the implementation of the electronic records management system that is currently in the 2023 capital program. And finally, that the 2023 surplus of $31,995 that is anticipated from exchange and staffing structured mid-year be transferred to a reserve to fund the financial impact until the end of 2025. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please, for that recommendation? Moved by Deputy Mayor Rose, seconded by Councilor Bunker. I open the floor to questions and comments. Yes, Mayor Roster.
I'd like to actually move an amendment to this and look at option 2, the deputy clerk. The report speaks to retitling the position of records management position to the deputy clerk. Like in essence, we're taking that role and moving in this deputy clerk role, but then it goes on to talk about keep some funds for this fiscal year, next fiscal year. I think it gets complicated when we're talking all these different roles. If there's a need for that, we can come back another time. But when I read the report and the deliverables, what we're looking to achieve, I think the option 2 is what the motion is speaking to. So I think
So
that's
are
right.
we moving to,
So in the report, like page 7, it speaks to the different options. Option 1 is the recommendation by staff. I'm suggesting option 2.
do I ask for a mover and a seconder for that change in motion, or do we deal with what we have on the floor?
Well, because not, I guess it's technically just an amendment to the motion. There's I just need to figure out what the amendment is versus just going to option 2 and creating it as a whole. So that'll just take me a second.
I support this. All I'm saying, I'm suggesting option 2, it was laid out, was the preferable option from my lens. And mover and seconder, I'm just suggesting, I'd like to move that amendment to option 2.
So just to get clarity, the second option, basically, the $10,000 of contracted services would not be kept going for the couple of years that we have to implement the records management, or just the 1 year.
They are asking for to go to the end of this year. And option 2 says, thank you, and put the thing back.
Okay, yes,
Through you, Madam Chair, if I can just speak to the $10,000 that you were just mentioning, because I did in terms of the financial impacts on this report. The $10,000 is currently in the budget for the contracted service of the records management coordinator. We don't typically, in previous years, we haven't spent that amount. It's usually $5,000 or $6,000. That is the actual expense for the year. But because of the heavy lifting in getting the electronic records management system underway, there's a lot of inputting work to do. The clerk's recommendation was to leave that $10,000 that's currently in the budget there just until the end of 2024. Because the funding from the vacant position currently, and it being a half year, that surplus really will fund any financial impacts until the end of 2025. And then it would just be a slight increase after that.
And
yes,
sorry, just to add to that, this contracted position is already currently working and has been working for 2023 since January. So this isn't something that we have we spent $0 yet. This person is currently working. I don't know how much she has invoiced as of today, but it's not that we're at 0, I guess, is the point.
yes, no.
I found this, actually, the report a little confusing. If we talk about historical, going back almost 10 years ago, and the evolution of the role, we're talking about help and support, which I support, 100% of support. but we're complicating because the first line, the recommendation and action says records management coordinator position job description be amended to the title of deputy clerk, period. What I'm hearing and seeing is the need and capacity as deputy clerk to help with what we're trying to do. We're complicating all these other variables. I think that what we're asking is increase the clerk's department with one more FTE with this deputy clerk. If there's a need for something else, come back later, but I think we're complicating it tonight. That's my amendment.
So the amendment,
Going straight up.
Yeah.
okay.
I don't know, I'm just saying, I'm just using the clerk's recommend, or the number two
So,
option for this time.
So then we will, you're moving the amendment to the motion. And we'll need a seconder for that. For option two. Do you have a seconder for option two? Okay, Deputy Mayor Rose. Any discussion on that option two?
Just one little bit, Madam Chair, when we talked about this at section, I brought up the $10,000 as well, and I thought if we're funding this position all the way through to 2025 with extra dollars that we had, it's a duplication for the last 7 or 8 months of this year, we keep that $10,000. So whatever is unspent from the contract this year should be transferred to that. To finish funding the job, and then we can end that contract position rather than having 2 people doing it.
I think maybe I will ask our either our clerk or our CEO to speak to this, because I don't know that there's a duplication, and I think maybe maybe it's not as clear as the report is intended to be. So maybe you can bring a little bit of clarity before we vote on it.
Sure, thank you, Madam Chair. I'll do my best and then I'll ask her if there's any gaps to fill in. I don't see this as a duplication. I see this as a solution that, you know, essentially option one and option two are similar. Option two would see essentially the reduction of that, or the elimination of that contract position that we currently have in place today. We use the number of 10 grand. We heard from our treasurer, it's usually between 5 and 6. So I don't see it as a duplication. What I see it as is this is a massive project to undertake. The recommendation is that we look at a deputy clerk position instead of what's currently in the budget and has been for several years as a records management coordinator. So it's not a new position, it's a position in the budget. We're asking to reframe it a little bit. And the focus of that position would be to get this project up and off the ground, which will take significant resources, time and energy. While that's happening, it allows our current plan, records management plan, and it's a very legislated, regulated requirement we have to continue in the background to the tune of about $5,000 a year. Because really and truly, I think it's going to be difficult for someone to manage this massive implementation, as well as continue the operation of bringing our records management into play. So I don't see it as a duplication. I see it as an opportunity to not allow us to fall behind while we're focusing on implementing a substantial program, project, and essentially system that this organization is going to have to live and breathe every single day once it gets up and off the ground. So I don't know if that provides a little bit of clarity. Madam Clerk, if I might, Madam Chair, I don't know if she wants to add anything to that.
That's exactly right. The other piece would be the carry forward from the person that's been handling the records this entire time. She's been in that position handling our records management for, I don't even know how long, probably at least 5 or 6 years minimum. And we will require her assistance in bringing those two programs together and understanding what she has and then how that connects with the new system as well. And I see it as something that would be beneficial, which is why I'm here.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
Just one other quick question, about how often does that contract position work? Is that a 5-day week gig?
1 day a week.
So 1 day a week for the last 4 or 5 years has been cut. Okay.
Cutting it meaning, I'd like you to clarify that by cutting.
Well,
The service delivery study did say that we needed to address records management with a full-time staff. So it wasn't cutting it through the service delivery, and that we did recognize. So that's why now we've budgeted for records management person now for a couple of years. We weren't able to implement it. So we've had, thankfully, this $10,000 contract holding up the fort to make sure that we're meeting legislation, but we're not. We're not. So I think that's why the full-time records management position is key through, or this records management is key through the deputy clerk. But this $10,000 contract will basically do day to day while this, this records management project through the deputy clerk will bring on board this huge, a huge job, because I've done it elsewhere and it is a beast to manage.
Don't get me wrong, I agree with the position, and we are funding a full-time position, so we're doing what we're asked to do and we're doing it. I'm saying that by cutting it, if over the last 3 or 4 years, we keep budgeting $10,000 a year to do it, and we only spend approximately $5,500 each year. If I was in charge of the project, I would be spending my full $10,000 allotment every year, and then we would be so far behind. So I'm saying for that $10,000, if $5,500 a year has been cutting it, why don't we take the surplus out of that 10,000 and apply it to the full-time position to increase it in its longevity past 2025?
I think we're complicating this, and I would say to the CEO, this motion speaks to, we want a new FT in the clerk department. That's the motion. Really, it's a very little piece about records management. I think we're going off on records management. The CEO's got a budget. He can manage that budget and he can put what he needs for records management. The request before us is new FT to help with everything. They'll realize all this other stuff inside the clerk's department, and they're saying they want a new FT. We're complicating the other variables. The CEO can manage the budget and the other positions in there. They want a new FT called deputy clerk. The first line of the motion says that the records management coordinator position and job description be amended to the title of deputy clerk. They're the ones saying we don't need this. They're saying make it a deputy clerk. That's all I'm saying, is we're complicating this thing tonight. All I'm saying is let's give them what they want. One deputy clerk, let's make it happen.
Thank you for those comments, and Councillor Ledermacher.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to correct his worship there with his comments that he made about a new FTE. So this, the records management coordinator is an existing FTE within the complement that has not been filled. The way I read this report was that they're proposing, instead of moving forward to fill this particular position, for the reasons outlined in the position, they're retitling it, having additional duties and responsibilities. Deputy clerk is all outlined in the report, changing the title. So the total number of FTEs is not increasing. It's changing the title of the records management coordinator to elevate it to a deputy clerk, to include records management and other functions within that role. So a little bit different than adding an FTE. It's just a conversion of an existing FTE. Thank you.
Thank you. So I think we are ready to go to the vote then for the amended motion that effectively removes the $10,000 and allocates it to the new deputy clerk position. All those in favor? Opposed? The motion is defeated. Now we'll go back to the original motion to I don't know if you want me to reread it, or if you just want to go to the vote, or if you want to have discussion about that motion, then we will go to the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? The motion is carried. Okay. We do have some referral items, and the recommendation is that the finance and public services section endorse the following additional and existing referrals that coming agendas and staff. The first is the big ballot consideration in 2026 municipal election, which will be of course in Q1 2025. We have the staff position of a grants writer that is slated for Q3 2023. And we also have a review of the municipal tax rate as it relates to municipal services, Q2 2023. Do I have a mover for that motion? And the second mover is Councillor Marchand, seconder, Councillor LaRue. All those in favor? Opposed, it's carried. We, next is the question period for media and public. Seeing no one in the audience, I will pass the chair back to you.
Thank you, Councillor Grush. I want to thank you, Sarah, for making the council meeting work here at the museum. I know it's not the same not having all of our comforts at home, but thank you. Sherry, thank you to you and your staff for hosting up here tonight. We got that on the goal. Importantly, recognize heritage in the museum, but maybe next year when we have our new swanky IT, we can host the museum at our new council chambers IT. That being said, we're gonna adjourn at 9:57. I'm mover. Deputy Mayor LaRue, second, Councilor Rush, all in favor? And we're adjourned at 9:57. Thank you, everyone.